All right, hello, welcome back to Unqualified Analysis. This formal version of Unqualified Analysis. Let me just tilt that mic towards me a little bit more. Didn't really help the levels. I'm trying to keep it down because your boy is in a hotel somewhere in the greater Ohio area. So yeah, we're here right now. I got the button down on because I didn't feel like getting undressed from work. We're on to a new chapter in life, and it's not been bad so far. It's not been bad at all. But hey, we got sports to talk about today. So got a couple of headlines, mostly like contract extension stuff. A lot of extension stuff came down the pipe today on Monday as I'm recording this. But yeah, I'm doing that, and I'm gonna go through some under the radar rookies. You know, not the first rounders, only one second rounder in there, just because I don't feel like he's getting enough pub. Is it a bit of a retread from the favorite draft pick segment? A little bit, but I intend to talk about them a little bit more. So, with that said, let's get into the action, shall we? We have got a few things to talk about. It'll probably be a shorter one, just because I mean, we're deep in the off season. Sorry, I had to get a burp out there real quick, but yeah, we are deep in the off season right now. So, listen to my dulcet tones. Try not to get too loud and annoy the neighbors, as I'm sure I've already done once or twice before. And yeah, let's just get into it. You know, get a quick gulp of the ice cold Coca-Cola, and yeah, we'll get into this thing. Who would have thought I need less caffeine after I've been sitting at a desk all day than when I was picking stuff up and putting it down, unloading a whole truck essentially by myself. It's crazy how much less tired you get when you're not just doing manual labor the whole day essentially. Well, it's a gross mischaracterization of what I was doing, but you get it. I'm sitting at a desk now. It feels good, folks. Feels very, very good. Either way, though, let's start off with under the radar rookies, shall we? Then we'll get into the headlines. Under the radar rookies, like I kind of put out there initially, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's not going to be the first round picks, not a whole lot of second round picks. It's guys that maybe you haven't heard of that I remember from watching college football. I remember seeing them on the stat sheet, seeing them on my TV screen, that I think got into some good situations to where, well, advantageous situations for their production at the very least, to where I think they're going to do very well in their rookie years. It maybe not the flashiest numbers, but I think they're going to play big roles in their rookie years. So let's just go down the list. Just kind of scrolled through the rounds, looked at some of the guys that were drafted, and said, "Yup, that guy. I think he's going to be all right." So starting off, my only second rounder in this entire thing, I'm looking at new Panthers running back Jonathan Brooks, who they took, 40 something overall out of the University of Texas, comes off of an ACL injury that ended his season last year a little prematurely. Might have been drafted a little bit higher if not for that ACL injury, but still, first running back taken off the board. Don't feel like he's getting a whole lot of pub because of where he went. The Panthers are still a dumpster fire. They got a long way to go to be any sort of competitive, and we're still not entirely sure of what they did for Bryce Young, or if Bryce Young is good. We're going to find out a lot this year just based on how much he improves, all that sort of stuff. It's a big year for Bryce Young, but I think Jonathan Brooks really, really helps out with that. I feel like they had next to no run game last year. Miles Sanders was the dud of all duds in the free agent market last year. The biggest whiff, not of all time necessarily, but certainly of last offseason for sure. This year, Jonathan Brooks coming in, they revamped the interior of that offensive line, signed a lot of big money contracts there in the interior. I feel like Dave Canales is going to get the run game going a little bit more. I feel like the interior, it's yet to be seen if it's better than what he had working with Baker Mayfield and Tampa down there, but at the very least, it seems like it's a good starting point for Bryce Young, for Jonathan Brooks. I feel like he's going to have some good production this year in the offense, and I think they're going to use him a lot out of the backfield as well, especially having a diminutive starting quarterback back there in Bryce Young. Check down options are going to be at a premium. I got another one here for the Cardinals that I'll be getting to here in just a second. It's not Xavier Legette. He was a first rounder, obviously. Everyone knows Xavier Legette. One of the great press conferences post-draft. He's had a couple of those where people just like listening to that man talk. I can't blame him. It's a fantastic voice he's got. It is a Southern-ass man, and it reminds me of my college days, the good old days, if you will. So all that is to say, I like the addition of Jonathan Brooks. I think he adds a little bit of a different sort of factor than what the Panthers were working with last year, which is frankly not much. I think Jonathan Brooks provides a lot, assuming he comes back healthy off of that ACL. So he's my first under-the-radar rookie because I don't think enough people are talking about him right now. I think the football nerds are talking about him, but I don't think the mainstream has really caught on to just how good Jonathan Brooks is. I think he flew under the radar because of that ACL injury. People just haven't seen him in quite a while. I think he tore his ACL either in October, early November, something along those lines. So didn't play in the college football playoff, didn't play in the Big 12 championship, didn't play in rivalry week as far as I know. So a guy that I think is going to remind some people who he is this year, assuming that the interior of that offensive line ends up being much better this year. And I think they spent the money to do so, but we shall see. My next under-the-radar rookie, I have got running back Trey Benson out of Florida State. He goes to the Arizona Cardinals in the 3rd round. I just love his pairing with James Conner, man. You're going to sense a bit of a theme. I'm very heavy on running back, very heavy on wide receiver in this under-the-radar rookies right here. But I just love, just in general, mid-round running backs tend to have a lot of production in their first years. It's kind of why running backs don't get paid a lot of money, because you can get a guy in the 3rd through 6th round. Isaiah Pacheco is in the 7th round even. That can get you some good production there out of the backfield and become one of the best running backs in the entire league fairly quickly. And I'm looking at the Cardinals backfield right now. James Conner is either he's about to turn 30 or he's a little bit over the age of 30, getting a little bit long in the tooth. Very much a power runner, not necessarily the shiftiest guy in the world. You bring in a guy like Trey Benson, very good out of the backfield, a little bit shiftier, a really good change of pace to James Conner. I think he adds a lot to that offense. Offensive line, still very much a work in progress. You pick up Jonah Williams in free agency. Middle of that offensive line, still a bit of a question mark, but didn't hinder James Conner a whole lot last year, and I don't think adding in Trey Benson is going to hurt them at all. I think it definitely helps them, and it just adds one more thing for Kyler Murray to fall back on, so there's just a little bit less on his plate. I think it really helps the offense overall, and I just really like the fit of Trey Benson there with the Arizona Cardinals for this upcoming season. Again, this may not be the biggest fantasy numbers in the world, like maybe he's going to be like one of your bye week starters, but as far as value to his team with the Arizona Cardinals, I think he's going to provide a whole lot for them this year. I think the Arizona Cardinals did, just about as good of a job as you can do in this offseason, coming off of a 4-13 year where they were just a bad football team, but they competed very hard. They beat the Eagles down the stretch of the season. They were in a lot of games that they weren't expected to be in, just couldn't quite get over the hump. For a quote-unquote tanking season, they did just about as good as you can imagine from a coaching standpoint, from an effort standpoint, all that sort of stuff. I feel like the addition of Trey Benson and like the 11 other draft picks plus the free agents they brought in this offseason, I feel like the Cardinals are going to be a little bit better than people expect. Now, does that mean 9-8? I feel like probably not. It's probably closer to like 8-9, 7-10, but I don't see him being a whole lot worse than that. I just really like Jonathan Gannon as a coach, which I didn't think would be the case whenever he got that job coming off of being the Philadelphia Eagles defensive coordinator. So props to them. Really like Trey Benson in this offense. My next under-the-radar rookie, really stumbled over my words there, but we're going to the 4th round. Tight end Jatavian Sanders, also going to Carolina, also out of the University of Texas. Just by the nature of Texas's offense, he wasn't used a great deal last year. Got some stuff to clean up in the blocking department, all that sort of stuff. Route running, obviously. Tight end is a difficult position to transition, but kind of working off of what I was talking about with Bryce Young in the checkdowns, nothing that a rookie QB or a young QB likes more than having a security blanket, 5 to 10 yards down the field, a guy that he can get an easy completion for, a guy that he can throw up and let him do all the work. That's exactly what he's getting with Jatavian Sanders. I feel like he is going to provide a a big time boost in that department, where if all goes wrong, you either look for Jonathan Brooks in the check down in the flat, or you look for Ja'Tavion Sanders in sort of the short to intermediate area to maybe he's come open on a bit of a scramble drill or something like that, or he's just sitting there, you decide to throw it up. That would be an ideal sort of role for him, I believe anyways. So I feel like, again, not a guy that got a whole lot of pub going into the draft, but I feel like Ja'Tavion Sanders is going to have a big impact on this offense. I think he's going to help keep the chains moving. If nothing else, I feel like the Panthers' offense is going to be better than it was last year. The question is how much better. It can't get a whole lot worse like we saw last year. I mean, it was just abysmal at basically every point of the season, except for I think when they played the Packers. They scored a bunch of points against the Packers. I think they still ended up losing, but they scored a bunch of points against the Packers. Outside of that, wasn't good. I feel like the addition of Dave Canales, the interior of the offensive line, Jonathan Brooks, Ja'Tavion Sanders, you get Xavier Legette on the outside. I feel like this is going to be, it's not going to push for a top 10 offense, I don't think, by any stretch of the imagination. But maybe you see it get out of the 20s. Maybe it gets into the low or the high mid-teens, something around those lines. I think that would be considered a success just based off of how abysmal they were last year. So I think Ja'Tavion Sanders is a big part of that. Another fourth-round rookie. We are going away from Carolina, away from the Cardinals. I'm looking at Tez Walker out of North Carolina, goes to the Ravens in the fourth round. You remember Tez Walker had that whole NCAA situation where they just, bent him over and screwed him real quick. Yeah, that Tez Walker didn't play the initial part of the season. Had trouble with timing and all that stuff as he got into the season. Had a ginormous game when he first got into the lineup again after the NCAA cleared him to go ahead and play. So I feel like he flew under the radar a little bit. He's a bit of an older prospect too. I mean, some GMs kind of take that into account more than others. I think it's a big reason why he slid, just that and the fact that it was a deep wide receiver class that kind of caused him to slide a little bit there. Big run on receivers early to where some other positions took priority. Ends up going in the fourth round, but Odell Beckham goes out of town. They still have Flowers in there, rookie from last year, going into his second year. Rashad Bateman, they just re-signed to a 3-year contract extension. They're looking for a guy to slot in there at the third receiver, and I just feel like Tez Walker is going to fit in there beautifully. Again, maybe not the biggest fantasy impact in the world, but he's going to be making a couple big plays where he jumps off the screen, in my opinion. I feel like he's a guy that can come in, provide a good option for Lamar Jackson. I feel like Todd Monken's going to scheme him in a way that'll get him open at times. He'll probably be working out of the slot a lot. We'll see what the split is between him and Zay Flowers in that slot role. I just feel like he's going to have an impact on this offense in year one. I feel like just because he was in the fourth round doesn't mean he doesn't provide value. I really like this pickup by the Baltimore Ravens. I think it'll pay dividends for the offense. Will he be better than Odell Beckham Jr. was last year? I mean, that's a tall order. I mean, Odell Beckham Jr. didn't have crazy numbers, but he did provide a really, really solid deep option. If he can just be a reasonable facsimile of that, I feel like he would be a real success in year one, and then that's something you can work off of from there. So, yeah, I have high hopes for Tez Walker in this Baltimore Ravens offense. And again, with all of these, health permitting, obviously, big if there, but I like Tez Walker in this offense with the Baltimore Ravens. All right, another fourth rounder here. A big value in the fourth round as far as I'm concerned. I got one more after this too, but for right now, running back Bucky Irving goes to the Buccaneers in the fourth round. I don't know for certain whether he's going to take Rachaad White's job. I feel like that's mostly Rachaad White's job to lose down there in Tampa, but I just feel like Bucky Irving provides a bit more of a change of pace. Rachaad White's, one of the best pass catchers out of the backfield in the entire league, but a bit more of a bruiser at the point of attack. He's not quite the shifty guy. And I know Bucky Irving didn't run great, and it didn't show on film either. I think he was the mid 4.5s, something like that. I think he's fast enough. He's shifty at the point of attack in the hole. He can provide some really good value running. Maybe he doesn't get the most reps in the world because he is behind Rachaad White. But I feel like he's a really good second option for that Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. with a little bit of improvement in the middle of that line, I feel like he could have a big impact in the reps that he does get. I just like Bucky Irving as a player when he was at Oregon, man. And it was a weird offense he was in, definitely not a pro style offense, but it just seemed like he had a big game week after week after week. Always seemed to jump off the screen, always seemed to be making a big play somewhere. I just feel like he's going to bring a good element to that Buccaneers offense. A little bit of change of pace from Rachaad White, which is weird because, you think of the big back being less of a catcher, small back doing more of the scat back routine. It's probably going to be a little bit of the reverse. Like Rachaad White is so good out of the backfield, you'd be a fool not to use him in that capacity. But Bucky Irving, I think, provides a really good running ability between the tackles, wherever you really want to run him. I think he's a very, very good runner. So I think they're going to, it's maybe one of the more predictable things in the world whenever he's in the game after a few weeks of teams watching film on him. But I feel like they're going to give him the ball a lot, maybe not so much out of the backfield, but I feel like just running wherever you need him to run pretty much, he's going to have a good role there with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So he's an under-the-radar rookie for me. Also here, rounding out the fourth round, and I think a guy that might have the best production of all of them this season, depending on where they decide to go with the receiving core. How about wide receiver Jacob Cowing with the San Francisco 49ers? Excuse me. So they get Ricky Pearsall in the first round. They still have Debo there. They still have Brandon Ayuk. I can't remember if Jawan Jennings is still there or not. But Jacob Cowing, that is all to say, he's maybe like the fourth wide receiver in the depth chart right now. Not a guy that you're probably going to want to pick up initially in your fantasy rosters. But man, this guy was a monster in college at Arizona. He was just, once he got there he was playing somewhere in Conference USA. I apologize to that team. You got poached by Arizona on that one. He just showed up from day one, got in there with initially, it was not Jaden Rashada. I forget the guy's name, but you understand. The former Arizona quarterback before they went over to Noah Fafita. Even with subpar quarterback play, he was making play after play. This past season, he gets Noah Fafita in there. Well, I guess he got Noah Fafita in there the first year, but either way, in the second year, didn't get quite as many yards, but got 13 touchdowns. He's just a baller. He's a little bit on the small side, but I just feel like you get a guy like that in your offense and give him to a guy like Kyle Shanahan. I feel like he's just going to find a way to get him open, get him in good situations. Same thing with Ricky Pearsall, honestly. They're kind of similar build, a little bit smaller, but good at the point of attack, all that sort of stuff, tough sort of guys. I just feel like maybe he'll be a little bit buried in the depth chart. Probably won't have the biggest numbers in the world, but ultimately, I think he's going to make an impact for this team. I feel like sometime in some critical moment, Jacob Cowing is going to be asked to go out there and, make a play pretty much. Like Debo's probably going to have, be pretty well covered up. Ayuk probably going to be the number one option in that situation, but maybe he's covered up. It's going to come down to guys like Ricky Pearsall or Jacob Cowing, and I just feel like at some point in the season, you're going to be seeing Jacob Cowing put in a position where he needs to make a play, and I think he's going to make that play. I really like him as a player, and again, he's going to be buried on that depth chart, so it is what it is there. Probably won't have the biggest numbers in the world, but I really, really do like Jacob Cowing as a prospect there coming in, and especially going into that offense. I just feel like he's going to have some degree of success. It feels like only a matter of time until either Debo or Ayuk head out of town via a trade or free agency. One of those, they're here in the next couple of years, and I feel like Cowing is going to fill at least some of that void. Different build, obviously, but I just really like the player. I think he was a monster when he was at Arizona. All right, so moving on to the fifth round at the Bills got the center Cedric Van Pran, Granger. Got about 1 million names there. He's a law firm, I tell you. Got him in the fifth round to the Buffalo Bills. Like I said, he was the starter at Georgia for 3 seasons, I want to say. Really experienced starter at center, a guy that you can kind of, fifth round pick, you hesitate to say plug and play, but the Bills do have kind of a hole there at center, and I feel like Cedric Van Pran, with that athleticism, with that the pedigree coming in, two-time national champion with the Georgia Bulldogs, the experience. I feel like he's going to step in, and he may not give up that job. I know he's a fifth-round pick, but mid-round offensive linemen work all the time. Just ask the LA Rams. They would know a thing or two about that. They've feasted off of that. Built up, I would say a fringe top 10 offensive line just entirely off of late to mid round picks. So it can happen. I feel very, very good about this one. I feel very, very good about the fit. And I just feel like at some point, maybe he won't start the season, but at some point in the season, I just have a feeling that Cedric Van Pran is going to step in there, and he's going to make a big impact for that offensive line, an offensive line that needs it, quite frankly. They lost a couple bodies up front. That team as a whole got decimated by salary cap restrictions. So that would be a big boost for Brandon Beane in this draft to get a starting center. I feel like they may have gotten one in Cedric Van Granger. All right, just a couple more here in the 5th round. Well, first and foremost, I need to wet the whistle real quick. Hold on. Ooh, baby, that's good. That's good stuff. Excuse me. My goodness, that's disgusting. Anyway, so in the 5th round, the Eagles get wide receiver Ainias Smith out of Texas A&M. This is another guy that I feel like he could have been a second, third round pick in a class that wasn't quite so deep at receiver, but the depth just pushed him down and down and down to where he ultimately went in the 5th round to the Philadelphia Eagles. Ainias Smith in college was a monster. He had, some terrible, inconsistent quarterback play. I couldn't even tell you the whole laundry list of guys that ended up throwing to him during his college career, but didn't really have a good one until Connor Wigman in his very last year, and then Connor Wigman broke his ankle, and they were back to the quarterback carousel of mediocrity. So even in spite of that, he consistently made really, really good catches. He consistently made big plays in that Texas A&M offense. And the Texas A&M offense, by the way, where Jimbo Fisher wasn't exactly doing some Kyle Shanahan shit. He wasn't doing Ryan Grubb stuff. He was kind of, this is my offense. I'm not changing it. You run it, and don't say a damn thing, pretty much. So it wasn't the most creative offense in the world is what I'm getting at there. And even with all the limitations around him, Ainias Smith just balled. No two ways about it. Ainias Smith balled, and I feel like you got the top 2 wide receivers there in Philly, obviously. You got A.J. Brown. You got Devontae Smith. Who's going to step into that 3rd spot? Who's it going to be? I haven't really looked at the depth chart. I feel very, very good about what Ainias Smith can do stepping into there. Not sure, again, what the free agency looked like for him. I just feel very, very good about Ainias Smith as a player. I feel like he can carve out a role for himself in that 3rd receiver role. And if he's working the slot, man, watch out. He can absolutely make some guys miss. He can get open. Jalen Hurts can get him the ball. I just feel like, hell, maybe even by the midway of the season, you start seeing him being a little bit more of a fantasy option for you too. I just feel very, very good about Ainias Smith as a player. The 5th round selection doesn't tell the whole story of just how good of a player he was at Texas A&M. Maybe there were some film concerns from some of the film nerds. I respect that. I haven't done a whole lot of due diligence in that, quite frankly, so I'll defer to them to a certain extent, but I just know what I saw. Same division as Mississippi State. I watch Texas A&M all the time, and Ainias Smith always popped off the screen. So, yeah, that's a guy that I have my eye on there for Philadelphia. I think they got themselves a good one there in the 5th round in Ainias Smith. All right, so we're getting into the deep bag here. I only got 2 more, 1 for each of the last 2 rounds. So my 6th rounder, I'm just obsessed with this guy. I can't help it. I don't think he's going to be a wide receiver, but wide receiver Johnny Wilson also went to Philadelphia. And again, I know I have a problem. I'm just fascinated by a guy who is 6'7", runs a 4.5, and is like 230, 240 pounds. Maybe he's not the quickest guy in the world. I don't know. I just have a feeling, and I understand, again, they got Dallas Goedert there at tight end. They don't need another tight end. What's need got to do with any of it, man? I feel like this guy if there ever was a guy in the Darren Waller mold that you can kind of transition over to tight end, put another 20 pounds on him. I mean, he doesn't have to be a stellar blocker, especially not initially in his career. Dallas Goedert is good enough in that department to kind of make up for it. Though I'm not sure how much you want to be using Dallas Goedert as an inline blocker with how good he is as a receiver, but I digress on that front. If you're looking to go with more two tight end sets, I feel like moving Johnny Wilson to tight end is a good vibe. I just feel like if he goes to tight end, he's going to be a matchup nightmare versus linebackers and safeties. I feel like he can provide a lot more value for you in that role than he could as a wide receiver. I just don't think he's an NFL wide receiver. I don't think he's quick enough. Maybe you can throw him some jump balls, but he'll never be anything better than like a rotation player or a wide receiver. He has the potential to be a legit star at tight end, and that's why I'm so fascinated by him. I just feel like I don't know if Philadelphia is going to make the switch for him to go to tight end. Like, hey, they didn't switch Keely Ringo to safety last year like I thought they might. They kept him at corner. More power to him. So it could very well just keep him at wide receiver, and he may just fade off into obscurity from there. He's a 6th-round pick, so that's not exactly out of the realm of possibility. That's actually the expectation, I feel like, for a 6th-round pick. Again, I just got a feeling you move him to tight end, you put on some weight there, get him just serviceable at blocking. He doesn't have to be great. He just got to stay in front of somebody for long enough to spring a run play every now and again. Get him on some linebackers and some safeties. He's going to work some magic. So that's a guy I'm watching there with Philadelphia as well. I thought Philadelphia had a really good draft, but there's a conspiracy that Howie Roseman just uses like a consensus of consensus big boards, an aggregate of big boards, if you will, to kind of rank his players, and then picks off of that. And then all of the ESPN and Fox, NFL Network pundits are like, they had a great draft because that's what their value on the big board said. May or may not be true. I have a hard time thinking that arguably the best GM in the league is using that tactic necessarily, but yeah, I just feel like they had a really good class this year. Hit some big-time needs. Got some really solid players in the middle of the draft. I'm looking forward to seeing how the Eagles look with those two new offensive and defensive coordinators, respectively, with the new players they brought in through free agency, the players they drafted. I just feel like that, the Eagles materially improved themselves this offseason, in an offseason that they frankly had to. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do. Obviously, based on my recklessly early predictions, I am quite high on the Eagles this upcoming season. So I'm looking forward to that. And we got one more here. This one's about as under the radar as it gets, folks. I am looking at tight end Jaheim Bell, formerly of South Carolina, transfers to Florida State last year, ends up in the 7th round to the New England Patriots. This dude is just an athlete, an absolute athlete. And Hunter Henry is such a good all-around tight end. I feel like you can ask Hunter Henry to do a little bit more of the dirty work, still get some good reps in the passing game. Hunter Henry is the number 1 tight end. We'll set that to the side. Jaheim Bell in 2 tight end sets, I feel like you can use him in so many creative ways in the offense, create matchup problems, create space for other players, get him in good matches for himself. I just remember against LSU, he just absolutely bulldozed an LSU player at the line of scrimmage, did some creative stuff within that offense that I think would definitely translate to the NFL. He's just such a versatile player, such a great athlete. He's fast, he's quick for a tight end. I just feel like with a creative offensive coordinator, and we'll see if Zach Robinson ends up being a creative offensive coordinator, I just feel like they can find a way to get that kid involved. This isn't like a Zach Kuntz situation last year with the Jets where, yes, drafted him in the 7th round, didn't have great production in college at all, was just kind of a project guy, and he was just totally into obscurity. I feel like with this Patriots team, they have a team that could really use a guy like Jaheim Bell. So I feel like he's going to get a solid role in there just within the rotation. We'll see how much he ends up playing. Again, definitely not a guy you want on your fantasy team, but I think a guy that can provide a lot of value to that Patriots offense that may not necessarily show up in the stat sheet, but just makes the offense better overall. So, yeah, I'm looking at Jaheim Bell there for my final under the radar rookies. All right, so with that said, there you have it. There are my under the radar rookies. I assume all of them are going to the Pro Bowl because, some are saying I am a genius. Again, not me. I'd never say such a conceited thing, but people are saying. People are saying. So who am I? Who am I to deny their opinions? So another quick sip/gulp of Coca-Cola, and then we're going to get into some headlines, and then we're going to get you out of here. So real quick. All right, so first and foremost, this is a little bit off the field controversy here. Rashee Rice, Rashee Rice, the wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs, that got into a hit and run incident in a street race in Dallas, being investigated. I think he was charged with, a bevy of offenses, had weed in his car as well in a state like Texas, where that's a big old no-no. Already had a bunch on his plate. Now he is being investigated for striking a photographer at a Dallas nightclub on last Monday night that was. And all I have to say is just, come on, dude. Come on. You go into last year, you're going to be a big-time receiving option in that Kansas City Chiefs offense, and ultimately, by the end of the year, he was their number one wide receiver. It was a pitiful wide receiver core, but still, he was the number one option by the end of the year. So they win the Super Bowl. You got so much promise. You just got to keep your head down, work, get better in the offseason so you can come back. You may be the number one receiver again. I mean, they got Hollywood Brown there. They got him. They drafted Xavier Worthy in the draft. Right now, it looks like Rashee Rice has a legitimate shot of being that number one wide receiver. And then you just got incident after incident happening in Dallas. Like, someone's got to sit this kid down and say, hey, man, you are gambling with your future earnings right now. Just take a look. If you want an example, and it's a different example for sure, I understand that. I mean, there's a couple examples. I mean, look at like Michael Vick, at least fairly similar. Obviously, Rashee Rice isn't doing anything with the dogfighting or anything like that, but Michael Vick had his entire career ahead of him. He had so much going for him. He gets popped for dogfighting, out for the duration of his prime pretty much. Comes back with the Eagles, but isn't quite the same player. He has a couple good seasons, but ultimately career was derailed, earnings derailed by that incident with the dogfighting. You look at Martavis Bryant. Again, not the same situation, but couldn't keep himself out of trouble. Gets suspended indefinitely for the duration of his prime. Now he's bouncing around on practice squads right now. Never ends up getting the big contract. Josh Gordon, again, more closer to Martavis Bryant, not exactly what I'm talking about with Rashee Rice, but again, couldn't keep himself out of trouble. Couldn't stop being suspended. Ultimately, gets suspended for the duration of his prime. Never the same whenever he does get reinstated several years later. So there's example after example after example of guys that have everything ahead of them. All they have to do is just stay on the straight and narrow and work hard, and they are just almost guaranteed, if they continue their trajectory, to have $100 million contracts, life-changing money that will have him and his family, his kids, set for the rest of their lives. Someone has to get in this kid's ear, and I'm sure someone's already done it, but someone has to get in this kid's ear and tell him that, okay, you need to tighten up a little bit. Otherwise, this whole thing could be gone tomorrow night very easily. If they get another offense in there, get another incident in there, this whole thing could come crumbling down. Doesn't matter if you're a second-round pick. Doesn't matter if you're the number one receiver on a Super Bowl winning team. It just doesn't matter. The list just goes on and on and on of players like Rashee Rice that just thought, okay, I've got what I've got. Let's just hang out. Let's act a fool. Let's just do whatever we were doing back in college. That's just simply not going to cut it in the NFL. Probably got to tighten up the friend circle a little bit. I would highly suggest moving out of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Just a thought. Just a change of scenery would do him well. I think living, and it's a hard sell, I understand that, but living in Kansas City may be the best thing for him right now. just because there are less temptations to go out and do dumb shit, which it seems like Rashee Rice has been very want to do. So I'm not sure if that was proper grammar, but we're just gonna roll with it. He has been want to do dumb shit in the past, obviously throughout the course of this offseason, and he's going to get suspended in some way, shape, or form in relation to that driving incident, the street racing incident a couple months back. It's just a matter of how long he gets suspended. He has time to get this thing right. That's the main message I want to get across here. It's not over for him. If he makes the right changes after these incidents, really as soon as he can possibly make those changes, he could still have a long, great career ahead of him just based on his trajectory from his rookie year. He has got to make changes, though, otherwise it is going to be derailed. That is a stone-cold fact. It is borne out time and time and time again in the past, and Rashee Rice is frankly no different. All right, so let's get into the happy stuff, shall we? We got big money getting handed out on this Monday as I'm recording it. First and foremost, the biggest contract of the day, maybe the biggest shocker of the day. The Lions made a gigantic, I mean enormous commitment to Jared Goff. They re-upped him on a 4-year, $212 million deal. Let me repeat that. $212 million over 4 years, $170 million of that guaranteed. Just Looney Tunes numbers for Jared Goff, especially you think about where he came from. I mean, the Rams essentially gave him away to get Matthew Stafford in there. And by the way, ended up working out for both franchises. Like, the Rams didn't want Jared Goff anymore. He goes to Detroit, has a career renaissance. Stafford goes to L.A. We all know he won a championship there, so it's all green grass over in that direction. Like, one of the few trades that I think legitimately worked out well for both franchises, which you can't say for a whole lot, but the contract that Jared Goff signed puts him at third in average annual value of his contract at $53 million per year. I mean, just what a career arc for this guy. Maybe a bit of an overpay, but with a guy that's performed like Jared Goff has, kind of in the fringe MVP conversation for a little bit last year, has had a couple years in a row where under that Ben Johnson offensive scheme has really hit his stride and played like a fringe top 10 quarterback for a lot of that time. I mean, it's well deserved. Again, it is probably an overpay at the end of the day, but that's just the going rate for a player that has played like Jared Goff has played. And honestly, if Kirk Cousins was healthy going into this offseason, you probably would have seen a similar number from him when it was all said and done. It's contract time, man. It's especially with quarterbacks. You're getting market value. Maybe you're not getting the Mahomes contract because no one is Patrick Mahomes. Didn't end up getting the Joe Burrow contract. But at the end of the day, when the check comes due and you've got one of those really solid quarterbacks in your building, you just got to pay them. It is what it is. And the Lions did just that. They gave up like $400 million in contract extensions here. I think like just over like the last month between Amon-Ra St. Brown, Penei Sewell, and now Jared Goff. Just a crazy amount of money doled out between those three contracts. Interested to see how they structure the team now that they have those big money contracts on the books. They were kind of skating by having to pay a little bit less for those guys because a lot of them were on rookie deals, specifically Sewell and Amon-Ra St. Brown. But I mean, there was a year where Jared Goff had like the highest cap hit in the league, and they still ended up winning, I think, like 10, 11 games. Maybe that was his last season when they won 12 games. So it hasn't necessarily hindered them. They're going to have to keep doing that, and I'm almost sure that this is going to be Ben Johnson's last year as the offensive coordinator, though I said that last season. So what do I know? Maybe it's going to be different this time around. But hey, man, this is the going rate for quarterbacks. I get why they did it. It's a massive number. Don't get me wrong. It is crazy that Jared Goff is getting that money, but when you play like Jared Goff did, that's the going rate. So I understand it. Just a crazy career arc for the guy, though. I mean, I and just about everyone else thought the dude was dead in the water when he was with the LA Rams. Comes to the Lions, has a career renaissance, gets a $200 million deal after signing that big deal with LA. I mean, a storybook career for this guy. I mean, what a ride it has been for him, and it's far from over. He's like right in the midst of his prime right now. So I would say I'm excited to see him, but he plays for the Detroit Lions, and I'd like my Vikings to do well. So not excited to see him at all, actually, but I wish him all the best in the world as a non biased observer. All right, second big contract of the day. The Bucks got the deal done with All-Pro safety Antoine Winfield. They inked him on a brand new 4-year, $84.1 million deal. $45 million of that guaranteed. It's the most guaranteed money ever for a safety, and it is now the highest average annual value for any DB, be that corner, safety, you name it. Any DB, he is now making the highest on a per year average of all of the players there. It is a big time extension, to say the least. It is a deserved extension. Like I said, all pro safety, those guys don't just grow on trees. Kind of bucks the trend of maybe the safeties being the running backs of the defensive backfield. That's running backs ain't getting that sort of money. I'll tell you what, he got absolutely paid in this deal. A market-setting money for all defensive backs, especially safeties. Though I'm assuming guys are looking at that deal and licking their chops right now with the possibility. I know Caleb Downs, and I know Caleb Downs is still 2 years off from getting into the NFL. But I'm sure he's taking notes on all of this right now. Sure, it won't be applicable for another 6, 7 years maybe before he gets his second deal. But guys like that, young guys on their rookie deals, are going to be coming into the league soon, are looking at that money and licking their chops. And I'm sure the agents are doing the exact same thing. With this contract, no doubt. Now T. Higgins is the only franchise tag player to sign an extension. Sorry, words are hard from time to time, but you understand what I'm saying. And again, we've talked about this time and time again. Would not expect T. Higgins to be in the market for an extension here. I'm sure his agents are going to try. I'm just not sure how receptive the Brown family is going to be. And I still have no idea what happens with that. It would be in the best interest of the franchise, assuming they're not going to sign him to a long-term extension, to trade him and get some assets out of him. But if you're going to do that, the best time to do it would have been before the NFL draft. So I don't know what they're doing. The Bengals run a little bit differently from everyone else. They're a mom and pop organization. They do their what's the word? They dance to the beat of their own drum. That's the proverb I was looking for. But yeah, T. Higgins is the very last player. He will not get a deal unless he takes a massive pay cut, I would imagine, to stay in Cincinnati. I'll have to get down there to watch one of his games while he's still with Joey B and the boys down there this season, within reasonable driving distance now. So that's very doable. Very, very doable. Your boy is going to be going to some football games this fall, boys and girls. Got my weekends back. Whew. I've got a little chunk of change in my pocket, boy. I'm gonna be living some football dreams this year. Maybe not seeing my Vikings, but sampling the local cuisine of sporting events, so to speak. Well, it's gonna be a good fall. It's gonna be a good fall. I just can't wait for football season to be back, man. That's the main thing. All right, so talking about a former Bengal now, Tyler Boyd is signing with the Titans on a 1-year deal worth $4.5 million. Not as bad a depth piece behind, not bad as a depth piece, behind DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley. Still work to do on the right side of the offensive line, but solid refit on the offense by Rand Carthon, renowned smuggler from the Star Wars universe, as we all know him to be. I feel like at this point, like I said, the right side of the offensive line is an issue, but Will Levis being a right-handed quarterback, he can avoid the pressure a little easier when it's coming from that side. The left side is rock solid after these last two drafts. I mean, you got J.C. Latham, Peter Skoronski is now moved into guard, so that left side absolutely rock solid. You signed a center in free agency, a solid little center there in free agency. So with the weapons that they've got, I feel like there is you should expect, if you're a Titans fan, to see a good leap from Will Levis this year. You're not going to have the excuses you had last year where it was just basically D-Hop and a bunch of dudes on the outside. They brought in some some seriously solid weapons. Good depth there in Tyler Boyd at the third receiver slot. He's thrived in that position with the Bengals for years. We'll see what he has left in the tank, but I think he's still good enough to provide a good change of pace, especially when you got those two guys on the outside. You expect Will Levis to take a big leap this year if he is, in fact, that guy. We'll find out. No one has the answer to that except for Will Levis himself, so we're just going to have to wait until he gets in the football field this fall. But, hey, the organization's done their part thus far. It's time for Will Levis to do his. All right, so Zay Jones, formerly of the Jacksonville Jaguars, gets released. Now he is signing with the Arizona Cardinals. Really, really solid pickup there by the Cardinals. Good value pickup there. He comes in with a bevy of new wide receivers. I'm not sure what the receiving core has in store for Kyler Murray this year. I think Monty Ossenfort's done about as good of a job this offseason as you can ask for a guy in a rebuilding situation. Still probably like a year off from really having a contender in there if they play their cards right. But, added a bunch of solid pieces, played around with the cap well, gotten pieces at positions of need, really focused on the defense this offseason, which I think is going to pay good dividends for them. And you bring in guys like Zay Jones, like I said, who are good value. I just really like what Monty Ossenfort's doing there, and I expect him to continue to just hoard assets in the draft going forward. That seems to be his modus operandi for building a football team, and he's doing a hell of a job as far as I'm concerned. I think he got the right coach in Jonathan Gannon. We'll see if he has the right quarterback in Kyler Murray. If he doesn't, I would imagine a quarterback is going to be on the list of needs for next year. Not the greatest year to be looking for a quarterback, but I digress on that front. But assuming that Kyler Murray is the guy, which is a big assumption, but we're just going to assume. I like Kyler Murray as a player. He's been up and down to say the least, though, so we'll put a pin in that for now. I just really like what Monty Ossenfort's doing. I think he's done a fantastic job there in his year and change as the Cardinals GM. And I've said it before in the Under the Radar Rookie segment. I feel like he's going to have a better team than people expect this year. I think, is it going to be good enough to not finish last in the NFC West? We'll see. I feel like that's a really good division this year between obviously the 49ers. The Seahawks are still very solid there. I think the Rams are going to take a step back with not having Aaron Donald to anchor that defense, not to mention Raheem Morris calling that defense. But I just feel like the Cardinals are on a good trajectory right now. I think they could be right there neck and neck with the Rams, maybe an 8-9, 7-10 sort of deal for them. I just feel like this could be a really solid year for the Cardinals, and it's due in large part to what Monty Ossenfort has done in the personnel department and the hiring department in bringing in Jonathan Gannon. All right, so we got one more headline, and then I'm getting y'all out of here so I don't know, it's like 6:50. I'm going to go get some food or something after I finish editing, but I digress on that front. Defensive end / outside linebacker Bud Dupree is signing with the LA Chargers on a 2-year, $10 million deal. $6 million of that is guaranteed. Ultimately, this is a move that you make because you need all the warm bodies you can get on the defensive side of the ball. That is kind of the sense that I get from what the Chargers did this offseason. Really just big bodies in the line of scrimmage, big bodies on the defensive side of the ball, guys that are going to rip your face off. Bud Dupree has done that in the past. He is a really solid guy that can kind of slot in there at the end of the day. We'll see if the move works out. Bud Dupree hasn't been a premier pass rusher for quite some time. He's had some injury trouble there. So, keep the expectations tempered to a certain degree, but it can't be anything but an addition for them, quite frankly. I mean, the Chargers need all the help they can get right now, and I think they're going to be better than people expect this year just because the Jim Harbaugh effect. I think they did enough on the line of scrimmage, on both sides of the line of scrimmage to at least be competitive. I think Jesse Minter is a legitimate NFL defensive coordinator. I think he's going to do a very good job for him on that front. Greg Roman is, I don't even want to talk about that, but good in the run game. very good at coordinating a run game. Passing game, high school offense. Run game, pro offense. So I think they're going to play some tear-jerkingly awful games to watch. They're going to be an under machine this year, I feel like. But I think they're going to grind out some games that people maybe don't expect them to win, and having Justin Herbert certainly helps. So adding in Bud Dupree kind of goes toward the goals that they're setting for themselves in year one. I don't know if the Chargers are going to be the sexiest team in the league. I would almost guarantee they're not going to be. But I think they are going to give a lot of teams a lot of problems this year en route to maybe 8-9, 7-10, kind of a similar range to what the Cardinals are looking at right now. I like the direction they're going. They're going to need more receivers out there outside of Ladd McConkey, who they got in the second round, but they just need time. The roster was so bereft of talent and so cap-strapped, so they had to get even more bereft of talent after, what was the guy's name? Current Raiders GM. I forget his name at the end of the day. I apologize to that man once again. I should know. Well, Brandon Staley is the offensive genius. I know that much. I know that much. So, yeah, the former regime went all in a way that kind of screwed them for now, but I feel good about the direction that the Chargers are going in the future. Got something in my eye. That's good. That's good. The pain lets me know I'm alive. Oh, goodness. All right. Well, with all that said, I guess that's a good spot to end this episode. Thank you all so much for tuning in, man. It's been quite a adventure here over the last week and change. The housing situation is in flux, to say the least. I still have an eyelash or something in my eye. It's not good. But yeah, thank you all so much for tuning into this podcast. We do this thing once a week during the off seasons, every Tuesday. You can set your calendars to it. I put them up at around like midnight. Sometimes I'm a little bit behind, so I put them up whenever I can get them out. But try and get them out consistently on Tuesday during the off season. If you enjoy, go ahead and subscribe wherever you listen to this, man. Whether it be Spotify, Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Amazon, any of those places, just go ahead, hit subscribe, share with a friend. Help me grow this damn thing a little bit. It would help. That's just no, it would help. So yeah, outside of that, if you want to follow me on all my socials, I totally forgot to say it at the top of the show because I'm out of practice here after about 2 weeks off, give or take, a week and a half off or something like that. You can follow me at CalebVUA. That is CalebVUA on X, Twitter, whatever you call it. If you still call it X, I don't trust you, but I respect your decision. However, am keeping my eye on you. But that's where you can follow me over there. If you want to contact the show, either shoot me a DM on Twitter or you can go to the email unqualifiedanalysis@gmail.com. Both links to those will be in the description, so you don't got to do a whole lot of work there. With that said, though, thank you all so much for tuning in to Unqualified Analysis. As always, I've got no clue what I'm talking about. However, one thing I learned this week: coffee is the second largest legal commodity sold in the world, with 22 billion pounds of production per year. So there you know. Oil, coffee, they run the world, man. I'll tell you what. All right. I will see y'all next Tuesday, I suppose. Deuces.